been a fighter all my life. As a bodybuilder, I was always the underdog, but I was still able to become one of the best bodybuilders of my era.
Gentlemen, best bodybuilder Rich Gaspari.
I ruled the stage.
My guest today is my great friend, bodybuilding legend and Hall of Famer, Rich Gaspari. We're going to talk about our shared story and our epic bodybuilding battles.
We were like, competitive rivals at the time, and I won one, and then all of a sudden I won the other. You won one, and I won one. I felt it was destined that I was going to become a great bodybuilder, even though I was told there was no way that I was going to be this great bodybuilder. Kind of the same story you did, Lee. You made me better as a bodybuilder, so you've motivated me from being a better bodybuilder and an entrepreneur.
We pushed each other, do or die. And you were the first one to have the striated gluteal muscles, right?
Yeah. The gym owners in the gym, and then he's looking at me, he goes, holy crap, he goes, your ass is striated. So I had her cut my trunks so you could see my glutes. And then what I did is I used some glue to glue my trunks on so they didn't go up my butt.
Right.
And
that's how you did it.
Welcome to the Labrada Show.
Brought to you by Lean Body, the #1 protein shake in gyms across America.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Labrada Show, the podcast that helps you to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health. My show is growing fast and becoming very popular thanks to you. So if you're enjoying the content, would you please hit the like button below and forward the show to one other person? And that's how we can continue to grow, and that's how I can keep you growing with our show. Today, we're going to learn about cultivating a champion's mentality as you face your personal challenges and competition in your life. You're going to learn how to overcome setbacks and adapt in order to succeed. My guest today is my great friend, bodybuilding legend and Hall of Famer, Rich Gaspari. Rich won the very first IFBB Arnold Classic in 1989 and is a past winner of the NPC National Championships, the IFBB Mr. Universe, and Professional Mr. World. One of his greatest achievements is that he's a 3-time first runner-up for the most coveted title in professional bodybuilding, the Mr. Olympia. Rich was inducted into the IFBB Pro Bodybuilding Hall of Fame, the Muscle Beach Hall of Fame, and was awarded the Arnold Classic Lifetime Achievement Award. And for those of you that don't know, the Mr. Olympia is the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. I personally competed on that Mr. Olympia stage 7 times, and Rich and I competed there together many times. Today, we're going to talk about our shared story and our epic bodybuilding battles, but we're also, more importantly, going to be discussing how we applied the many lessons that we learned along the way to our respective businesses and lives after bodybuilding. We're going to talk about developing discipline, resiliency, and how you can apply these things to come back from any situation and succeed. Rich, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Lee.
Man, it is so great to have you here. I was so excited when you called and we were talking about having you on the podcast, and I asked you about whether you wanted to do it remotely or in person. You said, "Heck no, I'm gonna come down and we're gonna do it in person."
I said I've always wanted to come down to see you, get to train with you. Like you said, we were like competitive rivals, at the time, and you made me better as a bodybuilder at the time, and truly respect the achievements that you have been able to do as well. So you've motivated me from being a better bodybuilder and an entrepreneur.
We pushed each other. Yes, and we learned together and got better together.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Rich, let's start by talking a little bit about your story.
Okay.
Everybody that starts out with a dream, and you have to start out with some sort of belief that you can accomplish what you're setting out to accomplish. Tell us about your dream, starting out as a bodybuilder. Tell us your story.
Well, it's funny, I really got to see bodybuilding, through a friend. This is when I was like 12 years old, and a friend of mine, we played catch in the backyard. And one of the days, I went into his basement. I don't know, whatever reason, we went in the basement. I saw these stacks of magazines. So I went to look at the stacks of magazines, and there was a bench there and some dumbbells. So I looked at the magazines, and it was the old Muscle Builder magazines, Joe Weider Muscle Builder. And I started looking at those magazines while I was down there, and I was so intrigued to see guys that to me, they look like superheroes. I saw, Robbie Robinson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, Franco Colombo, Frank Zane. And reading these magazines, I was like so like into wanting to go into my friend's house just to read these magazines. And I would ask him, can I take one of them home? And he goes, no, my father won't let you take them to do that. But that was my first intrigue into bodybuilding, to see that people can actually look like superheroes. Because before that, I would read comic books, with, the Hulk and Batman, and seeing these muscular, cartoon characters. And I said, people can really look like that. And that's why I was so intrigued to start reading about it. But I was still too young to really get into the bodybuilding. So it was a couple years later that I found this gym locally. It was called Health and Strength. It was in a town like 2 towns over. And I rode my bike to this gym, and I went down. It was this gym in this dingy basement. I went down there, and it felt like something from, Rocky, the Eye of the Tiger.
Right.
It was this dingy old gym. And then all these people in there, like, training, sweating in the gym. And I was so like amazed about like these guys training. It's just like, I want to do this. I want to be a bodybuilder. And I was just like this skinny kid. And I, came to the front counter to want to join the gym. And I didn't even think I had the money to join the gym.
Right.
So the guy goes, you know what, kid, if you want to, I'll let you train here. Just, I need you to clean the bathrooms. I need you to clean the sauna, the showers, and I'll give you a free membership. And, you can run the front desk in the afternoon after school to give out shakes and stuff. I said, yeah, I'll take it.
Wow.
I did. And that's how I started training in this gym,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So that was your start.
That was my start to like learning, to train. I was like 15, 16, and I started watching these guys, these amateur bodybuilders competing. There was a lot of power lifters in the gym as well. And, I was intrigued also to see how strong some of these guys were doing these lifts like squats and benching. So the first, part of me getting into training was trying to be strong.
Right.
Because I see all these other guys lifting, really heavy weights. So I got taught mostly by power lifters.
That's a good
And
point.
I learned all the basic moves, deadlifts, squatting, bench pressing, front presses, all those type of movements to get myself to get strong at 15, 16. Then what happened was I got challenged. There was a kid that was a couple years older than me in my high school that was already competing in teenage shows.
Right.
So there was a show coming up in Jersey called the Jersey Classic. It was this show that they ran every year. And actually it was called the Physique Classic. And, he was going into the teenage division, and I was still like 16 years old. And he told me like, you'll never, you can never beat me. This kid was like 17. You're never going to beat me. Yeah, he was like, you're never going to be better than me. Yeah, you suck.
So he threw the gauntlet.
Oh, he
down.
threw the gauntlet. I said, you know what? I'm going in this show.
That's all it took, right?
So I went into this teenage show, and I competed against this kid. I still remember his name. His name was Paul DeRugio. So he got, my fire to go into the show to beat this kid.
Right.
So I died for the show. I ended up going to the show. Mind you, I placed like 5th place.
Right.
But I beat him.
Yeah, that's all that mattered. Right?
I beat this kid. And when I went to that show, I was so like, I was bitten by the iron bug. Even though I was a kid at 16.
Right.
I just saw like competing on stage, and, I was upset. I came in 5th. But I was asking the judges, what can I do to improve? He was like,
you're one of the smart ones.
Yeah.
See, that's what I always used to do too. I would ask the judges, what can I do to improve?
I mean, they basically say you're a kid, you need more muscle,
right?
Gain more muscle. You have a bit of a good structure, see what you do next year. So I went into that show. It took me 2 years. I was 16. By 18 years old, I won that show, the Physique, and when I won the show, which was really cool, I went in as a teenager because I said, I want to win the overall as a teenager. At that year, there happened to be a heavyweight from New York, this really big kid that was going into the show that they were all saying he was going to be this great teenager that was going to go in and then win the teenage nationals, or they called it Mr. America back then. So I go into the show. I only go into the teenage division. I beat this kid as a light heavyweight. And then this kid goes into the men's open and he wins the overall in the open. I only compete in the teenage division. But I could have beaten him if I went into the open.
Yes.
So I said, I must have something. I'm 18 years old. I beat this kid.
Right.
That kid won the open, men's division, and I'm just 18. I think I got something here. Maybe I think I'm going to be good at this if I keep going.
You think?
So a year later, I ended up competing again in men's division shows. Well, actually, I went into a teenage show. Remember this guy named Lou Zwick?
Yes.
So Lou Zwick, he saw me as a prospect because I won that teenage show. Because Lou was looking at that kid. I think his name was Angelo Fazzola. Was this kid that Lou was like priming to win the teenage Mr. America. And then I beat him. So then Lou starts calling me and says, hey, I have this show called the America's Cup. It's going to be in California. I'd love to fly you to compete in the show. So I was 19 years old. I said, let me go into that show. So I went into the show. I went in, I beat, the main kids, the main guys in that show. Now I can't remember his name. You remember the really big guy back in the 80s and 90s, black guy with he was a young guy. They always thought he could be like this great bodybuilder. Do you remember who I'm talking about?
Victor?
Victor. Yeah. What's his last name? Victor.
I'm trying to remember. It'll come to me.
I know our age is getting to us.
He was like the first 300-pound guy.
But this guy was 300 pounds. As a teenager, he was like 275 on stage.
Right.
But I was already at that time as a teenager, like ripped. So I was known for my conditioning. This guy was just big, great, 21-inch arms. I ended up beating him.
Okay. Wow.
And when I beat this
enormous
guy,
yes.
Victor Richards.
Victor Richards. Yes.
So I beat him in that teenage show. And I remember backstage, he was so upset that I beat him. There's no way you should have beaten me. You're only 185 pounds and I'm 200.
I've heard that a lot in my career.
Yeah. So I beat this kid and I was like, wow, I beat this guy. It was like,
right.
I mean, he looked massively.
Right. Oh, no, he's a huge guy.
Huge guy.
He was like one of the first 300-pound
300-pound guys. But then as a teenager, I think he was maybe 260.
Yeah, just 260. Yeah.
As a teenager.
Yeah.
So that's how I was just bitten by the bug that I was going to keep going in the sport. And
that's a great story. Now, fast forward, because I saw you compete in the 1984 NPC Nationals in New Orleans, and you won the light heavyweight class.
Yes.
That was the year that Mike Christian won the heavyweight, and you went on to win the IFBB Mr. Universe that same year. How old were you?
I was just shy. I've just turned 20.
You had just turned 20. So you won these two shows and the IFBB Mr. Universe is the Amateur World Bodybuilding Championship. So you were the best amateur in the world in the light heavyweight class.
Exactly.
At the age of 20.
At 20. And what was amazing, like we were talking about who was that age. I think it was like Lou Ferrigno and Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I was always looking like, who was the youngest guy to win? I think there's a couple other guys that were young. What was the, can't think of his name. He was like 19 years old, the youngest Mr. America.
Was it John DeFendis?
No.
Casey Viator.
Casey Viator, that was the guy. He was the youngest Mr. America. So I couldn't beat him in that, but I did win the universe at 20, which I think only Lou and Arnold were able to do that.
An amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
Okay, and then.
But what happened here? Just to tell you the story, winning those two shows, winning the nationals, and as you know, like you and I, to win the Mr. Universe at that time or the World Championships, there was only 4 pros in the whole world at that time.
There were only 4 pro cards given out every year.
Every year for men.
And so as I recall, because I won in 85.
Yeah.
You had to literally win your class at the national championships here in the United States. You would then be sent overseas to compete in the World Championship.
Yes.
Which was the IFBB Mr. Universe. Then, if you won that, you became a pro.
Then you became a pro, and then you had the chance to going into the Mr. Olympia. But going back, like I said, I was winning all the local shows in the Jersey area, and then I was told, like, by a lot of people, it's like, you're a big fish in a little pond. You can never do anything, in the big ranks. You have to be in California to be a big bodybuilder. So at 20 years old, I was like, I'm moving to California.
So let me stop you there for a quick second, because this is a lesson that all of our viewers can learn from. A lot of times when you're aspiring to achieve great things, you're gonna have the naysayers come out. You know, and some are like family or friends that are trying to protect you from disappointment, trying to protect you from failure. But then there are others that are just jealous, right?
Yeah.
So how does a young Rich Gaspari, 20 years old, deal with the psychological pressure of all the naysayers?
I mean, I think about it now. Now I'm 61, and I think about my mindset. I was so focused and driven to be this great bodybuilder. I felt it was destined that I was going to become a great bodybuilder, even though I was told I didn't have the genetics, I didn't have the knowledge. There was no way that I was going to be this great bodybuilder. And I just said, I'm going to do it. Like
you were convinced, weren't you?
I was so, I really believe in positive affirmation. You hear a lot about now positive affirmation. If you put in your head over and over that you're going to be able to accomplish something, that it will happen. And I was so positively that I was going to be Mr. America and Mr. Universe that year. And I knew that if I was going to move to California, that I was going to take California by storm. And it was funny because, I was a pre-med student, 3 years into college.
You went to Rutgers.
I went to Rutgers University, and it's kind of the same story you did. Like I went into the nationals, and I was in the heavyweight class, and I was like about 208. And I went into that show and I placed 5th against really great guys: Rory Littemeyer, Matt Mendenhall, Mike Christian, and who else?
Fantastic heavyweights.
They were really good heavyweights.
Yeah.
I placed top 5 against those guys.
Wow.
So Ed Connors, he is the guy who owned Gold's Gyms.
Right. We had him on the show recently.
Oh, did you? So Ed Connors sees me and he comes up to me. He goes, you should go down to light heavyweight. You're going against these guys that are 220 and you're like 205. And here's another thing. I'd offer you a job to work in the Valley in Reseda at this Gold's Gym. Take the job. It's right next to Woodland Hills. You can get to, possibly see Joe Weider. So I was like, okay, I'm going to college, or I'm going to have this chance, this opportunity to move to California, work as a manager of a gym, and try to win Mr. America. So
you followed your dream.
I followed my dream, and my parents were so upset. And I said, listen, here's the deal. I will do 1 year. If I don't win the Mr. America, Mr. Universe, I'll go back to school and forget about bodybuilding.
Wow.
So I moved to California.
So you took that challenge.
I took the challenge. I said, I will, but I can't stay here in New Jersey because I know I'm going to have negative input from my parents. People tell me that I can't do it. So I said, I'm just moving to California. And I went out there. I was just shy of 20 years old, moving to California.
And your environment was totally different. It was an environment that was supportive when you got out there.
When I got out there, I started working in this gym in Reseda, the Gold's Gym. And what I was so amazed at, first off, when I got to California, with Ed Connors, he brought me to the Gold's Gym, and I start seeing all these people that I read about in the magazines. I see Tom Platz training in there. I see Samir Banu training. I saw the Barbarian Brothers, all these people I read about as a kid in the magazine. I'm seeing these,
and just being dropped into the movie set.
Yeah, and I was seeing these superheroes, and I was looking at these guys, and Lee, you probably know, like I was a very confident kid, very cocky, confident kid.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to kick these guys' asses. That's what I'm going to do.
I love it.
That was the attitude I had. It wasn't like I was intimidated.
No.
I go in there.
You just knew that you were going to beat them.
You know what? I'm from Jersey. We're tough guys. We train in the snow. These guys are like in the sun.
Right.
It's going to be much easier for me to beat these guys. And, and that was the attitude I had.
Sure, you're going to outwork them.
And I'm going to outwork them. And, seeing that at Venice Golds and going to the World's Gym and seeing Danny Padilla, seeing Frank Zane, I was just like, holy crap, this is it.
This is it. This is real.
This is real.
Yeah.
I'm here with these guys.
Yeah. Now, it's not cats and dogs anymore. It's elephants and tigers and lions. Yeah.
So then I worked at that gym in Reseda. And that was also a great gym to be at because there was Bertle Fox training there.
Yeah, big boy.
There was Albert Beckles training there.
Great bodybuilder.
There was Steve Borden, who became Sting, the wrestler Sting.
Right.
I would see Hulk Hogan in the gym.
Right.
And then another guy that
great cast of characters.
And then another guy that I saw was Lee Haney.
Yeah.
He just moved to California, and he came third in the Olympia. And I would watch all these guys training because I was managing the gym.
Right.
So I went in there like with a vengeance because I saw these greats and I'm like, I got to beat these guys. That was my attitude. I never was like, I can't beat these guys. I'm going in, I'm going to be the best that I can be. And I'm going to do everything I can, eat right, train right. So when I moved to California, I had such a tunnel vision. You know, people have told me like that were friends of mine when I moved to California, I wasn't out partying.
No.
I wasn't there was no nightclubs. There was no nightlife. There was no dating. I didn't even have a girlfriend. I moved to California with a mission.
With one mission.
Even if I saw a beautiful girl, I wouldn't even look at her. I was like, I'm going to the gym. That's a distraction. I'm going to come here and I'm winning Mr. America, Mr. Universe, because I only have 1 year to do this. Because if I don't do it, I have to give this up.
Wow.
So that was just my mind focus.
Just wow. And you did. You won.
Well, I ended up winning those 2 shows, as you said. And back then, you remember, you can win the nationals, but if you went to the world championships and you didn't win, you had to go back.
You were done.
You had to go back.
Yeah, you had to go back. And good luck.
And there was many guys, as we know, that never want to turn pro.
They didn't want to send you back.
Yeah.
They wanted to get somebody else a
They
chance.
got someone else to take your.
Yeah. So it was like burning the ships.
Yes.
Yeah, you had to land, and they burned the ships. There was only one. You weren't going back.
No.
Yeah.
And that was my mindset. And, and it was really cool. It was like
do or die.
I was out there, and you know, like I said, I was training like an animal, and then Lee saw me training.
Lee Haney.
And he came up to me, he goes, "Hey kid," he goes, "I'm getting ready for the Mr. Olympia. Would you like to be my training partner?"
You know, he asked you because you were training so hard.
That's what he said. He would always describe it. He said, "I seen this kid foaming at the mouth with the gym, lifting like crazy weight." I mean, Lee, I was really strong back then.
I know you were.
I was, behind the neck pressing like 365 for reps, squatting over 700 pounds, benching over 5 feet. So he's seen this kid lifting his heavy weights.
He figured you could push him.
Yeah, I could push him.
Yeah.
And I did. He asked me to train with him, and it was such like an honor because this was a top pro.
We had him on the show recently. Lee Haney, great guy, great friend. For those of you that don't know, Lee Haney was an 8-time Mr. Olympia in the 80s, back in Rich and I's time.
Yeah.
In fact, he was the guy that Rich and I kept trying to knock off.
We tried to knock him off. And we talked about this. I mean,
yep.
He was an anomaly because look at him today, and now as a retired bodybuilder, looking at that and looking at him and looking at me, and I'm like, I don't think I could ever beat him.
He was like a Michael Jordan in bodybuilding.
Yeah, unless he was
just amazing.
Unless he was off.
Yeah.
That's the only way you and I could beat that guy.
It's funny that you say that because that's what people don't realize is that bodybuilders at that pro level, at the world level, they are so good that on any given day, if one of them is off and the other's conditioning is better, the results could flip-flop.
Yes.
Like very quickly, because it's just degrees of separation.
And also, it's all subjective. Bodybuilding is a subjective sport.
Right.
You can have you have one set of judges and a different set of judges.
Yes, that's right.
That could change the outcome.
Changes things
Even
too.
though both could be great.
That's right.
The one set likes this look, or
because
one set
it's subjective. Do you like an apple or do you like an orange?
And we had that against you and I.
Yeah, right.
We can talk about it.
Apples and oranges. So you win both of those shows.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you go on to enter your first Mr. Olympia
I enter my first pro show. Which was the Night of the Champions back then, the New York Pro Show.
Okay.
So mind you, when I won the Nationals in Mr. Universe, I was 188 pounds.
Okay.
And remember, we discussed that I was a heavyweight and I had to bring my weight down. Mm-hmm. And I over dieted into the Nationals, where I came in about 180, 188. I should have been about 198.
Okay.
But because I over dieted and want to come in super shredded, for the show, I won the light heavyweight class. But that year I won I think it was October. The Night of the Champions was in May. So I went from a 188 and I competed in the Night of the Champions at 215.
Wow, that's a big difference.
And it wasn't like I was on this drug cycle that made me get this huge look. I was so depleted. And as we know, our muscles are glycogen.
Sure, you filled out.
So I just filled out. But as I filled out, I got harder and bigger and harder and bigger.
Right.
And when I was an amateur, I won the junior nationals as well. And when going to the nationals, I was a little lopsided. My legs were bigger than my upper body. And through Lee's tutelage, him helping me, I focused on my shoulders, my back, my upper body
Right.
and hone down on my legs a little bit so I can be more balanced. So the look that I got going into the pro show was a lot more balanced.
Right.
Even though I weighed almost the same in the national level, my legs were not as big. My shoulders were bigger. My back was bigger. So then competing in that show, I was like just a dark horse that ended up upsetting the whole, sport, because at that time I come in 215, Albert Beckles was in that show, and that we talked about, he was the oldest competitor.
56
And
years old.
And I was just 21 turning. I was 21. And I told you I was turning 22.
Amazing.
Olympia was 22.
Amazing.
And I come in second with a lot of people feeling I should have beaten them. And in that show were some greats, it was guys like Tony Pearson, Tom Platz. Also we talked about a lot of the other competitors that we looked up, like Bob Birdsong, that I looked up as as an amateur.
Great bodybuilder.
Mike Christian, who beat me in the beat me in the nationals for the overall, and beat me in the overall in the Mr. Universe. So he was kind of the guy, because he was tall. He was the guy that was going to give Lee Haney a run for his money.
Right.
But it ended up being me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Very, very quickly. So you take second at your pro debut.
Yes.
Yeah, the IFBB Night of the Champions, and then you go on to the
Mr. Olympia.
Okay, and at the ripe age of 22, you take third place in the Mr. Olympia. That was amazing.
And Lee, it was like, I went in there the same attitude, like I said, with this positive mindset. I'm going to win. And now that I look at us, and there was no way I was going to win.
But see, therein is the catch is you have to believe.
You have to believe
that you can win.
If you go into a show with I'm not going to win, you won't win, and you're going to leave stones unturned. When you go into a show, and we talked about this, is like I won by doing every single detail.
Right.
Lee, you had better. I could say you had better symmetry and aesthetics than I did. If I had to beat a guy like you, I had to beat him on conditioning, that wow factor, with striations and stuff. So that's how I had to be, or I had to really do a great presentation, make sure I didn't show my weak points. So everything was important. The posing aspect of it, the diet and the conditioning aspect of it, how I trained, how I felt, how my hair looked, my skin
everything,
tone,
all the details, all the details.
When I went into a show, it's like every detail had to be perfect,
right?
Because I was going against guys that had better, say, genetics than me. So how was I going to beat these guys?
Well, and it paid off, because in 86, 87, and 88, you take second place.
Yes.
What was going through your mind at that time?
Well, when I first got third, and I saw that my old training partner got third, and a year later he wins, I said, I'm going to follow suit, to do the same. So my first Olympia, I went into that show basically to beat Lee. I wanted to beat Lee, even though I respect him so much. I wanted to go into that show and say, well, I know I can get in better condition than him. At that point, what I was known for, I was the first bodybuilder with striated glutes. So there was a wow factor to my physique that a lot of other guys before me didn't have.
Right.
So I was able to do that in, going in condition. In that year, in 86, I went into the pro world, which before it became the Arnold Classic, it was the pro world.
Right.
And that show, the conditioning was even where I came in even more shredded. And that's where I got really famous for that conditioning wow factor.
Right.
Because I went against Mike Christian in that show, who was favored to win.
Right.
And I ended up getting, total first place, votes in that show. And then there was the LA Grand Prix that I won first place in that against Mike Christian again. So I was like, I'm ready to win the Olympia.
That's what's going through your mind.
That's what's going in my mind.
You're ready. You're ready. And then, so let's talk for 1 second about the conditioning, because you created a standard. At the time, the bodybuilding world was abuzz with, have you seen how hard Gaspari looks, how muscular, and you were the first one to have the striated gluteal muscles, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess the question is this, did you set out to develop striated glutes, or did they just come by the conditioning and obviously the heavy lifting in the gym?
It was by accident that I noticed that my glutes were
Yeah, now everybody's, you got to have striated glutes
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
going to compete as a pro bodybuilder today.
But
back then you were the first.
But what happened is, like, we talked about this earlier, like posing was a big integral part of my preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So I would spend hours just going through mandatories over and over and over. And I felt the reason I was able to get so conditioned is that I posed, and holding those poses got the muscle to get even harder. I'm a big advocate to, doing a lot more posing. And
Right.
that's one of my things about today's bodybuilders that feel posing is that important. I feel it should be part of their routine, not only because they can go on stage and give a great presentation, but it also causes an effect of the muscle just looking harder.
Right.
So in the room that I would pose, there was the gym I was at was this Gold's Gym, and the owner had a nice little room set up that I'd go in there, spend an hour just going through mandatories over and over and over.
An entire hour. And that's not easy to do.
Sweating.
Guys, for those of you that are not familiar with that, posing, in the sport of bodybuilding, and requires you to tense every muscle in your body and hold an isometric contraction, for up to 30, 45 seconds.
Exactly.
And then you basically turn and you go into another all body contraction, another pose, right? Yeah. So it tends to gas you out if you're not in good
You're
condition.
exhausted. You're
gassed.
sweating.
Yeah.
And if you think that's not a workout, it's a workout in itself.
It's a workout.
So anyways, turning around, trying to get my back to, show the best that it can look, the gym owner's in the gym, and I'm showing my hamstring, tie in. Then he's looking at me, he goes, holy crap. He goes, your ass is striated. So I'm looking at it and I'm posing, and he's, I started flexing. He goes, flex your ass. I flex my butt.
Yeah.
And it just
blows up.
It just blows up. And he's like, I've never seen that.
Right.
So
it's like, you're onto something.
Yeah. So that was my aha moment. I'm like, I got something.
I got to use that.
Use it as a weapon.
As a weapon. That's right. Yeah. And it's funny because I'll talk to my son Hunter. Hunter is an IFBB Olympian.
Yes.
And and he's competing now, and I'll talk to him about that very thing. Is that you got to use your weapons.
Yes.
So if you got great calves, make sure everybody sees them. If you got a great back, make sure everybody sees it. But you have to selectively focus on your strong points,
Because if you can selectively show those strong points, you can get the judges swayed not to look at your weak points.
Right.
As much.
That's right. And let me tell you, that happens.
Yes.
That happens.
So what happened was, Lee, then when I saw that I had, striated glutes, I call up, you remember CJ? She did like posing trunks.
Yes, she still does.
I call her up and I said, hey, CJ, I got a favor. I know I think we changed the sport because the trunks were made like the classic bodybuilding, really not showing your glutes.
Right.
So I had her cut my trunks.
Almost triangular.
Yes, so they were triangular so you could see my glutes. And then what I did is I used some glue to glue my trunks on so they didn't go up my butt.
Right.
And
that's how you did it.
So I was wearing trunks that were not like standard.
Right.
Right. Everyone else was using.
You were using them to allow the judges in the audience to see your glutes.
And when I went into that, like I said, when I went into the Mr. Olympia, I made sure I showed that attribute.
And now it's used almost as a barometer of conditioning.
Yes.
If you have striated glutes, you're typically in good condition.
And they blame me, say, because of you. Now
because of you.
Glutes.
So you mentioned the Arnold Classic. You were the first Arnold Classic winner in 1989. Let's talk about that.
So to talk about the Arnold Classic, I was not going to compete in that show for the fact that I went to battle in the Mr. Olympia and then the Grand Prix tour of 7 weeks of grueling shows that I went against you.
I know we were there.
And just to talk about, going against you, I have the deepest respect for you, Lee.
Thank you.
But before that, you understand, I never lost the show. Only one man beat me was Lee Haney.
Right.
Until there was this Lee Labrada.
What the? And he's not even that big.
So I went into the Grand Prix because in 87, I guess we competed, and I cleaned up the Grand Prix in 87. Right. The only guy to beat me, Lee Haney, went to the first one after the Olympia. He won. And then the rest of the Grand Prix, I was able to win.
You were the guy everybody was chasing.
Yeah, they were all.
Because they had to get past you to get to Haney.
To get to Lee. So I was the second place guy. They're probably like yourself saying, I got to be rich.
Right. Well,
So you're talking about the 89 Mr. Olympia. Let's talk about the Grand Prix tour.
yeah, let's talk about the Grand Prix tour first.
That's,
So we had some epic battles on that one. You know, hey guys, last night we were we were having some fillets and some red wine over at my house. Robin and Hunter cooked for us, and we were carrying on about some of the things that happened on the road there. So that in 1988, the Grand Prix circuit lasted 7 weeks, 7 shows in 7 weeks in different cities throughout Europe.
And then us traveling on planes from place to place.
In between. So
Yes.
it was grueling.
Some of the shows actually it was 6 weeks because we had like a week break. Some of the shows were like Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday that you and I had to compete against each other.
Right.
With 2 different outcomes where I won one and then all of a sudden I won the other. You won one and I won one. It was like,
well, what we talked about earlier, different set of judging panels can alter the results, you know.
Oh, it was amazing. But anyways,
yes.
Going into that Grand Prix tour, the Mr. Olympia, I get my 3rd, 2nd place. So I'm primed to go into the Grand Prix and clean up the Grand Prix. Little did I know that the 4th place guy was going to end up, being up my ass.
I ended up filling out.
Yes.
I was actually flat in 88 at the Olympia when I took 4th, and I ended up filling out on the
Grand Prix tour.
on the Grand Prix tour. You still took the lion's share of the wins.
Well, we did 4. Yeah, it was 7. I won 4. You won 3.
Right.
The first show, I guess, and you talked about earlier, is like, do you remember Greece? I go, hell, I remember Greece because that's the first time I got beaten.
I think Robin was referring to something different. So it's like, yeah, you remember I had a nice time in Greece with the ladies, with the girlfriends and the wives. Yeah, we went on a boat tour, and I go, well, we remember different things about Greece.
Well, when we went into that Grand Prix, like you said, it was the first time. Like you remember, I was trying to beat Lee, and everyone else was trying to beat me. And of course, you came in fuller. Listen, you looked amazing, in great shape.
Thank you.
It was just 2 different.
You did too.
It was just 2 different physiques. So I think that was the first Grand Prix. Was it the first one on the tour?
I'm not sure.
Maybe that. But anyways, going to that show, a friend of mine, he had a house there, so I spent. We remember when we got there, we were in this like little huts that were like horrible.
Yeah.
And there was no way we were going to stay that. We stayed in this nice hotel. Right. We go into the show, and
do you remember how hot that show was?
It was so hot.
Okay.
It was,
yeah, guys, you got to understand. I mean, this was a show that was held outside in Athens, Greece, and I think the ambient temperature was 90 degrees.
90 degrees.
It's unheard of because typically bodybuilding shows, they happen in air-conditioned auditoriums, and so we're literally outside in 90 degrees. Do you remember how hot the stage was?
It was burning your feet.
It was literally burning our feet.
Yeah.
We had to literally shift back and forth because the stage it felt like it was on fire.
Yeah. It was, like I said, the stage was on fire. Like I said, I was, still focused to, clean up all the shows and, going in there, little I know that you look great. And, I think we both look great. It's just like you said, it was a different set of judges that awarded you because you had great aesthetics and shape and you won that show. And it really affected me because it was funny because you did a whole photo shoot with Chris Lund in the Parthenon.
Yes.
But Chris Lund was looking for me.
Yes.
And I just,
you were supposed to do that photo shoot.
I just disappeared.
When you didn't show up for that photo shoot, Chris Lund calls me out and he goes, hey, I'm supposed to do a photo shoot with Rich, but he didn't show up. Do you want to go out on the Parthenon and shoot pictures? And I go, yeah.
And I wish I would have done that, but I was so devastated, honestly, to lose, because you're there to win. And I was so devastated, but I was not devastated where I'm done. I was devastated. I said, I'm beating him in the next show.
Yes.
That was,
yes.
So I think
100%.
we had a week break. I stayed in Greece at this gym and all I did was train, eat, sleep to say, I got to beat Lee Labrada.
And you did. You came back and beat me the next week. So, and then you started going back and forth.
Yeah, so, but I was, like I said, it was such a great tour that we went on, but it was a grueling tour because just mind you, you guys have to understand, this is not 1 week of preparing for a show. This is 7 weeks.
So you have to stay on that diet for 7 weeks, but you got to peak.
You have to peak
7 times.
So I would eat up the day after the show. then carb deplete, and then start carbing up again. So it was a
Yes.
whole process.
Well, I was doing the
of
same.
up and down, up and down.
I was doing the same thing. And you know what was really interesting is that I knew Rich was the only other guy that was sticking to the plan. And you would see these poor guys lose motivation. They would fail, and they would just start eating everything in sight and getting grossly out of condition. But I knew that Rich was still eating chicken and rice and staying on the program. I would too. I remember when we did one of the Grand Prix on that circuit in Germany, and we were taken by the promoter, such a nice guy, still a great friend to this day, Albert Busek.
Yeah.
He was the promoter. He took us to the nicest German restaurant. They had this great buffet there, and all of these guys, like, they dive into the food, right? And I think that Rich and I were the only two that were sitting there basically sipping water, watching the other guys eat. That was painful, man.
I know.
Watching those guys eat all that good food.
All this like great, Munich food, and and they're all eating it. I'm like, okay, that guy's out.
Yeah, that guy's out. That guy's out.
And I'm looking at Lee, and he's like,
and we're like looking at each other. We go, no, that's the taste of second place. I'm coming after you.
Going after. So, like I said, it showed our competitiveness, and you were a fierce competitor.
And so were you. That's one of the things I've always respected about you. You've got the champion mindset. And I could always tell that you were the guy that was outworking everybody. Rich, let me ask you this: how do you think you developed that motivation?
I think a lot of it stems from my father. I told you the other day, you said, what'd your dad do? My dad was a mason, a brick mason, bricklayer. And, I watched my father, how hard he works. I really respected it. My dad always says, if you want anything in life, nothing's handed to you. He came to the United States with very little money. He built himself, had rentals, and he did very, very well, but he had a third grade education, my dad, and he just worked hard. And I used to work with him, as a kid, going out there and in the summers, mixing cement and picking up bricks, and blocks. And my dad did this like 10 hours a day, 50 hours a week. And I watched how hard he worked. And I duly respected it, but I said, Dad, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to be a mason. Wow. There's no way I want to do this. And I don't know, back then, and this is why I had to leave, because I was going to college. My father said, you have two choices. Either you go to college and you get an education to do something, a doctor, civil engineer. To him, civil engineer was like the biggest thing that you can be, because he always wanted to be a civil engineer. And I know you were a civil engineer. And my oldest brother was, or you're going to take a trade. It's either got to be a mason, or I'm going to send you to be an apprentice as a carpenter, a plumber, electrician. I'm like, I don't really like any of those.
Dad, I want to be a bodybuilder.
I want to be a bodybuilder. So that's the reason why I also moved away, because I was just going to hear crap.
You were gonna hear it from them.
Yeah.
Rich, hearing you tell this story about your father and how he came to the United States with nothing, built a life for you guys, and how hard he worked, and the choices that he gave you. It's like I'm hearing my own story in a way. Yeah. My father was an immigrant, so was I. I was born in Cuba. My father was born in Cuba. We emigrated to the United States, carved out our lives together here. But I remember, watching him work hard. I remember that when it came time, it was at a crossroads. It's either you're going to go to college or you're going to go to work.
That's it.
Take your pick.
That's your pick.
Yeah. So it's like, they were disciplined. They were old school.
And he told me, he's like, I moved here for you, to give you a better life.
Wow.
And he says, don't take it for granted.
Right.
Don't take being here for granted.
Yeah.
If you're here in this country, this is the land of opportunity.
Yeah.
And, and I came here because, my dad was in his 40s when he moved here.
Yes.
And he said, I only have a certain amount of time, but you have your lifetime.
Right.
You have to be on top of my shoulders.
What an amazing thing.
And that was stuck in my head.
That's the American dream.
But that's what you said got me motivated to push harder. So I feel like I'm not doing anything.
Right.
I'm sitting back.
Right.
There's other people that are going to just pass me by.
So that's what motivates you initially to push harder, but I think that you'll agree that motivation is one thing, discipline is another. Discipline is the is I think the mindset that makes champions, and it's the ability, discipline's the ability to do the hard things over and over and over again, even when you don't want to do them.
Yeah.
How did you develop that discipline? Because your discipline is incredible.
I tell you, I come from an Italian, immigrants, a lot of cooking, a lot of great food. My mom was a great cook. And when I started seeing what I needed to do for bodybuilding, of course, it's like plain chicken, rice, sweet potatoes, egg whites. And, my mother would be like, come on, you look too skinny. Have some of this
You don't
food.
like my cooking anymore.
Yeah. So I'd be like, I can't eat this. And there would be times, like you said, where I knew I had to look a certain way, and eating that was not going to get me to look like that. You asked me, like, how did I know how to get into that condition? As a pre-med student, I took everything very, analytical. And what I did is I kept logs and journals. So I really studied like my macronutrients. And back in the day, you remember most guys, they would eat whatever. And then before a show, they would start just carb depleting, just eating high proteins, low carbs.
Right.
And I tried at the beginning when I competed, and I came in really flat. I found that I needed a combination of, cycling my carbs in my diet so that I could fill up my muscle, deplete, but then fill my muscle with carbs, deplete, and fill in muscle that I can get tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's all by me, like, writing it
Trial
down,
and
trial and error, and putting down on paper what I look like, how I felt. And that's what really got me more and more like close to knowing exactly what worked for my body. And everybody's different, obviously.
Sure.
So the discipline all came from, I looked at food as not something for enjoyment, more to get me to an end result.
Right.
I didn't look at food anymore as like something that I ate this and it was like, this was my splurge. I looked at it and said, I'm going to eat this.
It's a means to an end.
Exactly. So I looked at it differently when I was competing.
Right.
Of course I loved,
The taste of food. Everybody loves the taste of food.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But then I looked at it and said, you know what? I'm doing this. I got this window of opportunity, and you can't be a bodybuilder forever, but I'm going to make sure that food is a means to an end, not just for enjoyment.
So it's a perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to see the end clearly.
And it didn't bother me. If you saw someone in front of me eating ice cream,
Didn't bother you.
It didn't. I don't know if it bothered you. It didn't bother me at all. I could look at that and, oh, excuse me, I'm eating this. I said, don't worry about it. I really don't care.
Yeah, it didn't bother me at all. It didn't bother me at all. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
One of the things that's running through my mind right now, and I had to go through this myself, the day that you realize that your competitive time is done and you have to move on, and so you hit the ceiling, right? We have both gone through that, and professional athletes do that all the time. They hit the end of their competitive career, and they realize that that they're not going to move on. How did you handle that emotionally? Do you remember some of the things that you were going through?
Well, I do remember, like, after winning the '89 Arnold Classic and going through that grueling Grand Prix tour. Because you didn't go to the Arnold Classic that year.
No, I did not.
Yeah, probably because the same reason I shouldn't have, that you were probably burnt out from and you needed a rest.
Oh
correct?
my gosh, right?
So, but what happened with that show is Arnold called me personally on the phone, and he goes, "I'm running the first Arnold Classic." I want to say his voice. "I'm running the first Arnold Classic, and I would like you to enter the show. You're one of the greats." So. I was like, I really don't want to go on the show, as I just went through a grueling tour, 8 shows, and I was literally burnt out. But him calling me personally, he said, it's going to be great.
It made a difference.
There's going to be TV coverage. I'm going to fly you on the Tonight Show. There's just a lot of like perks that I felt like, okay, I'll go on the show. I set myself to go on the show. And getting ready for that show was the lightest I ever was as well. I got sick on the way going to the show. I caught the flu.
Okay.
Then I had to play catch up to try to fill out. I won that show. Robbie Robinson came in second, who looked probably at his best. But I was still able to win the show. And from that point, then came the '89 Olympia. And honestly, I almost felt like I needed a break. My body was just,
You were worn out.
I was tired.
Yeah.
I was just tired. But then I said, oh, it's the Olympia coming. And,
Yes.
89. It's in Italy. I'm Italian. I have
Yes,
great fans.
you got to.
So,
Homeland.
yeah. So I ended up, I don't know if you know this, Lee, like I lived in Italy for 2 months before that show. I said, I'm going to live in Italy. I'm going to train for that show. And the guy that I mentioned to you yesterday, Piero Forti, he helped out Eduardo Kovac in 88, but I became good friends with him. After the Olympia, he got me some work in Italy. And he said, if you like, the Olympia is going to be in Rimini. Why don't you come to, to live in northern Italy? I was like near Lake Como.
Beautiful area.
Really like in the Alps. It was just a beautiful area.
Gorgeous.
This gym, I felt like Rocky because it was like in the middle of nowhere. This gym, all I did was eat, sleep, and train.
Right.
In this gym.
Right. Now, let me stop you for a quick second, because you told me over dinner that you actually had a bunch of
equipment,
Body Masters gym equipment flown over to basically equip your gym because you needed certain pieces of machinery and they didn't have them there.
I felt they didn't have really good leg machines. I mean, fast forward now, Rudy Panada with Panada, and there's a lot of, Gym 80. They make great equipment. But at that time,
not a lot.
It wasn't really great equipment in 89.
Right.
So,
dude, that's hardcore.
And so I said,
you had your own equipment shipped over.
I talked to Boyer Co. at the time, and he worked for Body Masters. He gave me a deal on equipment. I bought the equipment, shipped it over to Italy to this gym that I was going to train at for the show. Because I said, I'm going to put the right equipment. I'm going to just eat, sleep, and train in this little village that I was at. They had this lake that I would lay out in sun. And so anyways, I did the show. And that year, you came in second that year. And I came in fourth. And a guy beat me. Remember who came in third? He won like the Masters Olympia many, many times.
Vince Taylor. Vince Taylor came in
third.
Yes.
So I ended up coming in fourth, which really.
So what happened?
What happened in that show?
Were you holding some fluid?
Yes, I was holding. I was holding fluid in the prejudging,
and it can happen, man, to the best of us.
And honestly, I took a diuretic, which I've never done. Remember, we talked about diuretics.
Sure.
I've never taken diuretics. I took. I remember aldacticide.
Yeah.
I took it for like a week straight.
Right.
And then it had an opposite effect on me. So in prejudging, I was like, I'm known for being shredded.
And you did.
I ended up having water, and I guess the judges, what they did is they really worked me because they're not used to seeing me looking, watery. So pose and pose and pose. I was sweating, which got me a lot better for the night show, but it was too late.
Right.
It was too late. You got
the finals.
You got second.
Yeah.
Vince Taylor got third.
Yeah.
I ended up getting in fourth place.
I want to tell you something. The night before that show, I had an incident where I completely flattened out.
Oh, really?
Because I was drinking distilled water. And I had ended up washing all the sodium, so much sodium out of my body that I literally flattened out. And, I remember my friend Tom Dieters, who was the editor-in-chief of Muscle and Fitness Magazine. We went to school together.
Yeah, no.
And he was best man at my wedding. Anyway, he said, you know what? You need to get some sodium. And I'm going, sodium?
Yeah.
Like sodium's the enemy back then, right? So,
yeah.
But yeah, I had some salt, man, said my prayers, and I went to bed, and that next morning I woke up full and shredded.
It's such a big
people
thing.
don't understand that.
No,
water.
I get people.
Yeah, water balance.
You need to have the water balance. If you're going to carb load, you actually need sodium to get those carbohydrates into the muscle.
That's right.
And a lot of people, like you said, are afraid that sodium's the enemy.
Yeah, sodium. They cut their sodium too hard. Or they cut their water too hard.
And drinking distilled water is not a good idea.
Not a good idea, as I found out. So I almost ended up showing up flat and waterlogged myself.
Oh, wow. So anyways, that got me in fourth place. Then there was a Grand Prix that because I got fourth, I was like, I'm not going to Grand Prix.
Right.
I needed, it wasn't because I didn't want to go in the Grand Prix because I was a sore sport. I felt literally
wiped out.
Okay. I was burnt.
Okay.
I needed a break. And I said, I just need a break. And
so I'm going to use this as a teaching moment for our viewers, so, you reach a point where you have a setback. What have you learned from your experiences in terms of setbacks that our viewers can benefit from, and when they have setbacks in their own lives?
I think you just have to like regroup, and figure out what you need to do. Like what I should have done was take a year off totally and then come back. But I didn't. And I think looking back, that was a mistake because my physique actually, I'm not going to not train hard, but I was training as hard as I could, but my body was regressing instead of getting better. So there was something wrong. My body was too tired. It just needed a break. And I didn't take that break. And I went into 1990, coming in 5th in the drug test in Mr. Olympia. Again, then in 91, I went again. And I was already like, I'm done, but I'm going to do this Olympia. And I got in the top 10. And that's when I basically said I'm retiring, because my body was just tired.
Okay.
So I took off 2 years, from training. I think you were still going. You were still competing in shows and placing well. But I just took a break. And then I made a comeback in 94. But the sport totally changed. I was going against guys like Dorian Yates, Nasser El Sambadi, Ronnie Coleman now came to light, Flex Miller,
big guys,
Kevin LeBron. And I was like, holy crap. These guys were it was a changing of the guard.
The sport had evolved. That's a good way of putting it. Changing of the guard.
And so I was like the guy from the past trying to make a comeback. Again, I went into a pro show, came in 5th place. I said, okay, I need to get bigger. And I was looking at the protocol that these bodybuilders were doing, and I felt like I just didn't even have the knowledge that these guys had in getting to look like that.
Right.
And I call it a blessing in disguise. In 95, I was training for the Night of the Champions, and I herniated a disc in my neck.
Okay.
And I told you about that. I've been affected by that since that.
Yeah, big setback at the time.
Basically what happened when I did that, my total right arm just got paralyzed. I couldn't do anything. I was bedridden because I was in so much pain.
Wow. And
while I was in bed, I'm like, my career's done. I can't compete no more. This is nerve damage. There's nothing I can do.
It's unnerving, isn't it?
Yeah. And
pardon the pun. I'm just saying.
It was where I knew that this part of my life was changing.
It's changing.
And at that time, I owned a gym. I was doing some like personal training besides competing. And I was doing I was selling supplements, but not my brand. I was just selling other brands of supplements.
Right.
So I was doing really well, like selling, these different brands because I was helping guys compete with the personal training, and I was giving them, supplements that I think they should take, BCAAs, creatine, all these different products. So when I had that serious injury and it just debilitated me while I was in bed, I said, like, what am I going to do with my life? Mm-hmm. And while I was in bed, I said, I'm going to start my own supplement line.
Well, see, which is great, because that brought in the next phase of your life. But you didn't sit there and feel sorry for yourself.
No, I was I got to do something.
I got to do something. Okay, well, what's next? So you regrouped.
I regrouped, and honestly, you were one of the guys that motivated me because you had your company, Lean Body, and I saw like, wow, he's doing really well, to see him putting ads out there. And I was like, let me do it. Let me try this. And I had the little bit of the money that I had. I took it all, and I just, how you bet on black.
Yes.
It was all or nothing.
Yes.
I put everything I had. I made certain products that I developed.
Yep.
And honestly, what I did is I sold everything I had. I bought a van. I bought the products that I had. And then what I was doing is I was visiting all the local gyms.
I love that.
And I went gym to gym to gym to all the gyms that I used to train at when I was competing.
Right.
And honestly, it was kind of a weird experience because I thought these guys would come with open arms. But a lot of guys were like, oh, we're not interested. Really? I said, you were interested when I was that pro bodybuilder that you let me train in your gym. Wow. But now that I'm sitting here trying to sell you something, they weren't interested.
Right.
So I had a lot of doors slammed on me.
Right.
honestly, it was a tough road.
It was a tough time.
Yeah, to start a supplement line. And I went to Joe Weider, and he gave me a break because he actually gave me some ads. He gave me a year of ads in his magazines for my
Wow,
brand.
I didn't know that.
He offered me that, and he says, I want to help you out, Rich. You're starting this product line. Here's a year's worth of ads.
That's very generous of him.
And he did that for me. So I don't know how you had a relationship
I
with
had
Joe
a great
Weider.
relationship with Joe Weider.
And you did, and it's funny because Joe, you could hear stories of other guys like Lee Haney, yourself, myself, and you thought this guy, like, you were his favorite, but every guy was his favorite. And he was just such a great guy. I mean, inviting me to his house, having lunch, with him. And I remember just, being with this guy. It's like, I want to be like this guy.
He made you feel like you were the only guy in the room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was so great but you could tell stories probably about how he treated you that same way, that you were this, great bodybuilder and you were the only guy in the room. But he did that with me. He did that with like Lee Haney.
Right.
I hear other
Right.
stories of other guys that he was like that with because he had a passion.
Yeah, he was amazing. Him and his brother Ben, literally started the whole bodybuilding movement.
The whole bodybuilding because
built
of
it
these
up
guys.
from nothing. Starting in the 40s.
Yes.
And created what we know today as the Mr. Olympia and modern bodybuilding.
And we are the fortunate guys to be able to experience, because now today's bodybuilders, they don't even know. They see this image in the Mr. Olympia. Who's that guy with the mustache?
That's right. That's right.
That's Joe Weider.
That's Joe Weider. Yeah.
And
so I'm glad that we're talking about his legacy. One of the most important people in the entire history of bodybuilding.
he really is. We would not be where we are at today
That's right.
if it wasn't
I
for
would
Joe
agree.
Weider.
I would agree.
You wouldn't have what you have with your supplement line and myself and everything that he was able to
created
do
a foundation, a
Yes.
springboard for the rest of us.
for the rest of us. And it's just amazing. But he offered that to me. He's like, I'm going to do you a favor, Richie. I'm going to give you these. Remember his voice?
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm going to give you these ads. I'm going to give you like 6 months worth of flex and 6
right.
months worth of muscle and fitness. And to me, that was just starting my company. You remember how ads, they cost a lot of money.
Yes.
And that was advertisement. Now today it's totally different with social media and target marketing, and it's a totally different animal. But he offered that to me, and what I did while I was, saying I was debilitated in bed, I went to some manufacturers. I studied it, and I said, "Where's the manufacturers?" I went there. I private labeled products for myself, and at the beginning it was a very basic line, but it was the start. And I went door to door to door with a minivan. I don't know if you know this. I had, back then I had a 911 Porsche at this beautiful house. I sold everything, and I just started this supplement line with
You put
in the same way I took bodybuilding, that I was going to be the best bodybuilder and I was going to be someone, is the same thing I did with the supplement company.
I was going to ask you about that. Did you approach it with the same mentality? Because I think that the reason that people don't take on challenges to a degree is because of fear of failure.
Exactly.
Why do people focus on failure instead of focusing on the success, what they actually want?
I think all the more successful entrepreneurs went through failure, and you have to accept that. You just have to
Yes.
go all in. And
Yes.
sometimes you just got to jump,
Yes.
you just got to
And
jump off.
it's not a failure if we're learning from it.
No,
right?
if you're going to learn from it.
Yeah.
And listen, I had setbacks and failures starting the company. Like I said, I had doors slammed in my face, but I just kept, like you said, I was tenacious as a bodybuilder. I was tenacious as a business person. I went door to door to door until guys like, yes, I'll buy it. And then I started selling to this guy and selling to that guy. I had the ads in the magazines. So I was actually getting people to buy in different parts of the country that were buying the line. And it's funny, I have a story. You know who Eric Hillman, of course, who owns Europa.
Yes.
So I started judging shows when I retired. And with Eric Hillman, I saw him in the judging panel. I go, oh, this guy owns a distribution. So I went up there and said, hey, Eric, can I get my line with you? And he's like, oh, Richie, it's going to, you don't really know, you don't have a demand for your line. And, it's going to take, I'm going to ask you for terms, and do you have the money to back it up? And he was like, well, how much are you going to buy? Oh, I'm going to buy. Back then it was like $1 million, like $50,000 in product. To me, it was like $1 million.
Right.
So, I went to my older brother, and he gave me a loan to get me the money. And here's how I got.
You were all in.
I was all in, like, I didn't do this.
Yeah.
So this is something I did. I don't know if you know this, Lee. So, they were based in North Carolina.
Yes, the distributor, Europa.
Europa. So I don't know if you noticed what I did is like, he goes, there's no demand, the stores in the area. So I started calling all the local stores. Hey, do you, with a different voice, hey, you carry Gaspari Nutrition? And I called this store in South Carolina, North Carolina. I started calling all these local stores.
And creating demand.
Yeah, causing demand.
Yes.
So, because I was saying to the owners, so then they went back to Europa, saying, hey, do you carry in this Gaspari? So I went back to Eric and I said, hey, can I get my line in? Because, it's funny, I'm starting to get premier brand. So he took on the line.
I love it.
And, he took on I took on the terms.
Yep.
I ended up paying back my brother. Back then, you had much better margins, in profit.
That's right.
And I was able to pay him back. And that's how I got the ball rolling.
That's amazing.
And it's all about persistence and having a positive outlook and doing anything. And listen, you're going to fall on your face and you're going to fail, and I've still have things that happen, and as well as probably you do, in these little setbacks, but you always have to just keep moving forward.
Yeah, you do. I'm gonna pick up on what you just said, because that's one of my favorite sayings, is to fail forward.
Yeah,
it's not a failure if you learn from it and you adjust course and then you take the next step. But what happens a lot of times is that people they're afraid of what others are going to think.
Exactly.
If they fail. You can't care about what others think. You just have to do what you need to do to get to your goal.
You talk about that, caring what people say. Is like the first, I set up a booth at the Arnold Classic, years later.
Yes.
And I had a little 10 by 10 booth. And it was funny because, remember, I was going, door to door in a minivan.
Right.
And people were like, wow, look at poor Rich Gaspari. He's like, he was this great champion. Now he's in this like minivan trying to push his products.
And you have to humble yourself, and there you are.
Yeah. And I was at the Arnold Classic, and I remember I was just sitting there all day at a booth. You remember, that's a 3-day show, and I had no help, and I was just there.
Just hammering it.
And I had a little bit of some guys like come in to go to the bathroom and come back.
Right.
But people were like feeling sorry for me because I just had this little backdrop with a product. And, but I said, I'm going to do this.
That's how you start. Start small.
You start small and you just grow.
And you just can't care what people think.
And you just can't care what people think, because if you do, that's what's going to set you back. It's like, I call it white noise. There's always going to be negative people out there.
Yeah.
They're going to talk crap.
That's a good way of putting it. It's just noise.
Yeah. And if you just set your mind to do something, of course, you may have to, what we call pivot. If you're trying to do something and you're trying and trying and trying, and it's like,
it's not working. You have to pivot.
And then you do something that would maybe change.
But I think that's a success factor. You have to be dogged and determined, and you have to keep putting one foot in front of the next, forward momentum, right? But you also have to be flexible enough, to shift if you have to, but you just keep moving forward.
Yeah. And that's been my life. It's like, I've always been an underdog, and I don't mind being an underdog, that I can just keep pushing. And, I want to motivate today's new generation of people that, you just have to be persistent, work hard. Like my dad, set that in my head, is like, work hard and you will reap the rewards. If you just sit back and think it's going to be handed in your lap, you're not going to get that.
It's not going to happen.
No.
What are some of your other recommendations for aspiring entrepreneurs and business people?
I think you need to study your market, what you want to get into. It may be like, we talked about this earlier.
Sure.
When I got here, it's like, today to start a supplement line.
Yeah, it's tough.
Is very tough. When we did a supplement line, there was not that many players.
It was still in its nascency.
It was in its infancy.
Yeah.
And there was still opportunity. So even running out of a van, going door to door, you can grow a business.
Right.
But today, it's very difficult. It's a totally different animal, very, very competitive. People are running off, just sharp, very small margins.
Yes.
Growing business, you have to really be educated. I think a big part of it is just, look at the market that you're going into, that you have this passion for.
Right.
Really be educated on a lot of things, like, you have to know accounting. Some guys don't realize it's so important to know how to read
some accounting basics, right?
Yeah, you need to know basics and look at what we talked about. I say about margins and profit margins, and how you're going to spend your money and set yourself up where you plan. you have to plan on anything that you do. If you don't plan, you're going to fail. You
That's
fail
right.
to plan.
That's right.
You fail to plan, you plan to fail.
That's right.
And that's part of what I see in any, entrepreneur. But have a passion. Whatever you're going to do, if you have a passion like never before, you will succeed. Don't look at the money more than have that passion for something that you love doing. Because if you do something every day for hours and it's a passion, it's really not work.
That's right.
But if you work and every day you're like, oh crap, I got to go to work today.
Yeah,
This sucks.
that's the way to live, right?
And there's a lot of people.
Yeah,
probably
unfortunately.
how many of you think, Lee, probably 95% of the population, that's how they live in this world.
Yeah,
They live with
I sure hope that it's not that high, but
whatever it is.
It's no fun that way.
But they're afraid, like you said.
They're afraid.
Because they have what I call the golden handcuffs. If a guy is working a job and he's getting a steady paycheck that keeps a roof over his head, he's got life, health insurance, and it's hard. An entrepreneur, people think it's this glamorous job. It's crap.
It's work.
It's work, but I mean,
It's work.
you're living, like I said.
And there's a lot of risk when you first jump out.
That's what I'm saying.
So you have to acknowledge that. Some people, you got kids,
Yeah,
you got a wife, you got to feed, you got to keep a roof over their head. So it's tougher.
it is a lot tougher.
Yeah.
But if you have a good, that's another thing, having a good partner that supports you, for whatever quest that you have and passions, that they're there for you. And I see a lot of people, when they have the right partner, they can be even more successful.
That's right.
So that's my suggestion to anybody who's trying to be an entrepreneur.
That's it, and it's good. Now, Rich, I'm looking at you right now. You're 60 years young. You're still in great
61.
shape. 61.
Yeah.
And 60 plus one.
Plus one.
You're still in great shape. Do you still enjoy working out?
I love working out. I still love every day. I think we talked earlier. I get up every morning, 5 o'clock, 5:15. I get up, wake up. I do my, and I don't know if you do any type of like meditation. I do about 5-minute meditation. I do some positive affirmation. I still believe in that fully.
I think it's great.
And then I go to the gym, about 6:30. I train till around 8. Then I start my day at work. And, the training for me is not, not competing anymore. I just love to train. To me, it's like, it's my meditation as well. Like
Right.
going in there, getting a pump. We're not going to to succeed and, go in the masters, or people say, oh, you look good, you're going to the that ain't happening. I do this because I love doing it.
That's right.
I love getting up. And when I do train in the morning, it sets my day.
Yeah.
It really does. I feel great.
You've accomplished something big.
Exactly. It's
Already,
just-
right from the
I don't know if you believe in this. Is like every morning I get up, the first accomplishment is to make my bed.
100%. 100%. Yes.
So you make your bed, and
I
that's
do
your
the
first
same. I do the same thing.
Yeah, that's your first
Yeah,
accomplishment.
you got to have success habits.
Yeah. So if you have those success
Yeah,
habits,
and it's funny because by sticking to the little habits, it helps to build the discipline for the bigger habits.
exactly,
as well.
and that's how you
Yeah.
build that. When you asked earlier about discipline, it's like you just have to have that discipline. That's like it's methodical. You do it over and over.
You have to be methodical. I get questions about bodybuilding over 60. I'm sure that you do too. How has your training changed over the years?
I mean, it's been hard, Lee, because I love lifting heavy, but the thing is I've had some setbacks where I guess God is just preventing me from lifting heavy. When I herniated the disc, and I told you a couple years ago I had surgery to put an artificial disc in my neck.
Right.
My nerve in my right side is still weaker. So, I used to pick up 150-pound dumbbells on presses. Now I could do like 40-pound dumbbells. It's just, I'm not able to lift those heavy weights that I could. So now I look at it, I said, okay, I'm going to lift lighter. I'm going to get more.
Lighter for you is really heavy for the average man. I mean, if you take a 61-year-old, the average 61-year-old off the street, they can't pick up 40-pound dumbbells.
I guess they do like 15-pound dumbbells.
Yeah, so you're doing okay, man.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it's like, shit, I'm like, I see kids in the gym, like lifting heavy dumbbells. They're doing 100s and, I'm doing my 30s and 40s for flies and stuff, pre-exhaustion. But no, I the way I look at it now is like, I try to really feel the weight where you can still get that great feeling of the pump, and you still can get that training a muscle, to failure. using a lighter weight or doing, more slow-mo reps, whatever I got to do to prevent myself from using heavy weights. I get a little stupid sometimes, and you may see me on, doing like heavy leg press because I feel good that day, and I'll try it, for reps. But I only do that once in a while. And if it really looks like I can't do it, I won't do it. But I think it's just accepting the fact that you can't push that heavy weights.
Not like you did when you were half your age. Yeah, but I think the key is to be the best you can be at each age.
Exactly. And, we all have our little, injuries and things that happen,
Sure.
My knees hurt a little bit now, so I'm very careful, on how I do legs. I always wear like neoprene wraps. And to make
you have to take the precautions and warm up and that kind of thing. Rich, let me talk to you about something that's on top of the minds of a lot of mature males, and that is, as we get older, our testosterone declines.
Yeah.
We had Dr. Larry Lipschultz, who's the head of urology at Baylor College of Medicine, on the show. And he talked about hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy for men. What are your thoughts on that?
I fully believe in it. When I stopped competing, I dabbled back and forth to it's hard to just give up everything. And I was kind of using, TRT, but beyond TRT. And then I'm like, what am I doing this for? I don't want to do this just because I'm not going to compete anymore. So when I got tested for my testosterone, it was down to like 200. My total testosterone was extremely low.
So you didn't feel good?
No, I felt really tired, depressed. So what I did is I went to, a clinic to start using. I started using with the creams,
right?
But I didn't really have a good effect with that.
Right.
So then I just started doing the injections. I do testosterone, but nowhere near like when I competed.
Small amounts.
Yeah, I do a small amount. My test levels
to bring you into the normal range.
I'm at like 700.
Yep.
Total, which is not crazy. I mean, it's high.
Yep.
I guess maybe
it's average.
It's average.
I've been watching Dr. Peter Attia, and they had a segment on the TRT, and one of the ranges that was discussed was 700 to 800.
So I said, as long as I'm like 800, I think I'm at a good level. I feel great. I get up in the morning. I want to train.
Right.
I still get a pump. I think it helps just the quality of life.
Quality of life, yeah.
I do get, I go to a cardiologist. I make sure I check my hemoglobin, my hemocrine levels, because anyone who's older that goes on testosterone, you really have to be careful with your red blood cell count going up, which can cause strokes. So you want to make sure those are normal. I check my cholesterol, my triglycerides, all these things, because I think I mentioned to you earlier, I got a scare because I went for a total cardiology exam, but much more. I did a stress test. I did I did the EKG, ultrasound. But one of the tests that I did, and I tell everyone that's past 50, is to get a C score. A C score sees the calcium in your arteries.
Right.
And that test, besides all the other ones, and mind you, your insurance doesn't cover it, but it's only $100 for this test.
Yes.
And I don't know why they don't recommend it, but that C score, mine was extremely high when I had it done. So that had me go further into getting an exam, and they went in.
An angiogram.
Yeah, and they went in, and they actually, what is when they go in through your wrist?
Yeah, the catheter. Yeah.
Catheter. So they went all the way in, and they said, you have a 70% blockage. So they went in, they put in a stent, opened up my artery, and actually I felt a huge difference because I thought I was fine. I thought it was just age, but I actually could feel I was less winded. I could go up and down stairs much easier.
So it worked.
It did work.
It was preventative. It could have saved your life.
And he said, I was listen, Lee, I was very, very depressed because I'm a guy who trains every day.
Yes.
And it was funny because when I got the catheter done, I was in the middle, and there was two people, one on each side, that were getting the same catheterization. One woman was like 300 pounds.
Yeah. And
there was another, like, I don't know, close to 80-year-old guy. Both of them had clear arteries.
Right.
I was the guy with looked in shape.
Right.
With the 70% blockage.
Yes.
And what I found, what the doctor told me, is like, it's genetic.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it that's genetic.
It may have come up because, people are like, oh, you're a bodybuilder, it's the steroids. It could accelerate it slightly, but if you look at your family history, And anyone out there, if your family history has any type of heart disease, heart attacks, get yourself examined
Yes.
so that it's preventative.
Yes.
I mean, I think there's three ways to help keep yourself living longer, and that's doing a colonoscopy.
Yes.
Which I just had mine done, and I found some polyps, and they removed them.
Yes.
A complete cardiology exam and a prostate exam.
100%. I've done all three of those.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I joke with my friends, and it's like, you need to go get tested. Okay. You got to understand, I'm a car with 64,000 miles on it.
Yeah, that's what it
okay.
is.
So I got to look under the hood every year.
Yeah.
And I got to test the belts,
Exactly.
look at the spark plugs, everything.
And I go every 6 months. I don't know if you know this. My dad died of prostate cancer, so I'm more of a candidate for prostate cancer. So I always check my PSA.
Right.
Always to
Track
make sure.
that.
Yeah, make sure it's at normal levels.
Yes.
And I've had some scares, but I had prostatitis, and which it ended up being just a false scare.
Right.
But it's very preventative. You can prevent cancer, and that's a very preventable cancer.
Very high survivability rate.
Yes, if you get it caught early.
Yes.
Colon cancer, also very preventable.
Yes.
If you catch it early.
Right.
Heart disease. Since I had that stent put in, I was on blood thinners. Now I'm off of them. And because I check, and the doctor's like, listen, the other outcome was a heart attack.
Right.
And then it's too late because your heart is already weakened with the heart attack. My heart is healthy. It's just I have to watch that my what do you call it? All my arteries are clear.
Right.
That I don't have any issues. With blood
I'm really
flow.
glad to hear that you're taking care of yourself like that. I think it's really important as we get older to do that. Let me ask you this: some of the other challenges that older athletes may be having, bone density. You hear about them having muscle loss and et cetera, et cetera. When is it too late to start training? Is it ever too late to start training?
I don't think it's ever too late. I mean, maybe competing in bodybuilding shows.
Of course.
It's too late. I don't even know if it's too late because you got guys competing in their 60s. I would never use any of the, ergogenic aids or steroids like past 50 because you're going
Not a good idea.
Yeah, you're going to have negative side effects besides TRT, which you can do. But you do lose muscle. I've lost muscle, obviously.
We both have.
We both have. And, and we're doing everything in our power to keep as much muscle as we can.
And I think that the closest thing that we can get to that, to keeping that muscle, is to keep lifting.
It just keeps you lifting.
Resistance exercise, plus a good diet that's high in protein.
Exactly.
And give yourself the best ability to recover is going to give you the best results.
I follow a high protein diet. I can't eat as much, than I used to, but I still eat about 4 meals a day. Sometimes 5 with shakes. Higher protein, less. I try to stay away from sugars completely. White flour, white sugar, those are the ultimate poisons in your body.
That's right.
We talked about earlier, like if you see what is it? Corn syrup.
Solids.
Yeah.
Corn syrup solids. And
stay away from those.
Yes.
Eat natural. I mean, it's
as natural as possible, right?
You're finding out now that having natural butter and beef is better than having the alternatives that are out there.
Yeah, like the margarine and that kind
all
of thing.
those are healthier if you have a small amount. But I think the killer is staying away from any type of sugars.
Sugars. Yeah.
So I feel healthy. I'm weight training because it's been proven that you will live longer if you weight train.
No doubt about it.
And I do that more than even cardio. I do some cardio. But
I do some cardio also, but not nearly as much as I do weight training.
And you do the weight training.
And I do the weight training, and I think that it's far superior than cardiovascular exercise. Not just for muscle mass and bone density, which are critical as we get older, but also I think that weight training, when it's done a certain way, can be pretty cardiovascular. It gives you great cardiovascular results.
I love doing high. We talked about that earlier about leg training. I've always done high reps.
High rep.
And
I was surprised to hear that.
Yeah, because and I did that through my career. I was higher reps with legs than upper body.
Yeah.
You walk on your legs all day.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. It's interesting you bring that up because we had Dr. Mike Israetel on the show here recently, and he put Hunter through a high repetition leg protocol. And I'll tell you that by the end of the leg workout, Hunter could not squat his own body weight without his legs shaking.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was really amazing. But the research is showing now that anywhere between 5 and 30 repetitions, is great for hypertrophy. And we talked about this over breakfast. It just makes perfect sense to go higher reps on leg training.
And I think weight training in general keeps the bone density. You want bone density.
That's
you
right.
don't want osteoporosis.
Yeah.
Is more inevitable for guys getting older. And if you can keep those bones dense,
yes,
you're not going to break a hip. You're not going to, like all these things that you see older people. I mean, I see people in their mid 50s and they look like they're my grandfather.
Yeah, it's sad, but again, that's what happens when you eat the typical Western diet and don't exercise.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you have a range of supplements called Gaspari Ageless.
Yes.
And let's talk about those and how can those help mature athletes?
Well, when I developed Gaspari Nutrition, it was more for helping myself as an athlete, proteins, creatine, amino acids, because those are all the products that we use to help develop our body. But as I aged, I said, what are the side effects of aging? You have inflammation, you have issues with your prostate, you have heart issues. All these effects that you have when you age, there's got to be nutraceuticals that can help, stave off those effects. So that's what I started doing research, and I developed like an anti-inflammatory, high curcumin, that you can add to a product, beetroot, which is really good for blood flow. If you have heart issues, with prostate, there's other, great supplements to take. So the reason I came up with this line is because I know as I aged, there was products that could help with these ailments, so that you can live a better quality of life. So, I mean, that's why I came up with the line, more so for seeing the effects that it had on me, being older. And I know a lot of the people that, were buyers of my brand also got older, so they would support, that brand.
Absolutely. I would encourage you guys to check it out. I actually looked it up on the website, and it's a great range.
Thank you.
So Rich, let me ask you this. You have 2 children, you have Sophia and Donato. Do they look up to Dad and ask him about nutrition and exercise?
My daughter, who's 17, is asking me more so like about nutrition because she's, 17 as a teenager. A lot of her friends will come, like some of the friends that are boys would be like, they look me up online.
And they go, holy cow, your dad is a big dude.
Yeah, that's what they do. So they'll want to come over just to the house to like start talking to me about body. My daughter's like, you want to come here with, hang out with me or hang out with him? But it's, it's cool. She does ask me like questions on how to train. I mean, she's really not into it. She wants to just look good. She's a teenager that wants to look good. She's just not interested in competing, which listen, I'm not against it.
Sure.
But I'm not like really, if I, to stay away from competing, I'd be like, I'd rather you not compete.
You want her to be healthy.
Yeah, I want her to be healthy. My son, is just turning 5. So, and it's funny because you and I get mixed up because we both own supplement lines. We're both from the same era.
Isn't that funny? I have had guys come up to me and go, hey, Rich. And I go, nope, that's the next booth over.
But I was just at a show. I was in England.
Yeah.
And they start talking to me. Oh, your son's great. He's going to do great in the Olympia. Blah, blah, blah. I said,
let me show you a picture of my son. He's 5 years old.
He's 5 years. That's right. Oh, okay, Lee. I go, no, I'm not Lee. So we get mixed up all the time.
That's funny.
For the fact that we came from the same era. We both have supplement lines.
Yep.
But it's always like, they always bring up my son. And I go, yeah, I'm really proud of my son. And oh, he's going to do great in the Olympia. I said, yeah, maybe in 20 years from now.
That's great. Rich, let me ask you, what are you passionate about? What is your life mission?
What is my passion? I want to make sure that my kids are going to do well in life, that I'm able to at least take some of the positive things that I've been able to do to pass it on to them, just the way my dad passed on to me. Because then I think they'll do great, in life, to, like I said, to work hard, be passionate, whatever you want to do. because I tell my daughter, I said, whatever you want to do, do something that you love to do. I need to tell you this, but like I told you, my parents were very disappointed when I went into bodybuilding, but then my father became one of my biggest fans.
Oh, I know he
went
did.
to all my shows.
I know he did because I would see him at your shows.
Yeah.
And he would talk to me. And, he was proud of you.
And on his deathbed, that I still remember this, he came to me, he goes, I'm so proud of you because you did what you wanted to do, even though I told you and discouraged you not to do it. You did it. And and it was such it really meant something to me that my dad, told me that.
Wow.
But what do I want to leave out there? I want to leave this legacy of what you said about, working hard, being tenacious, striving to do anything to get that goal in life, be passionate. And, I see that where people talk about that online, about myself, at least that word is out there. When I received you said about getting the Arnold Classic award from Arnold.
The Lifetime Award.
Lifetime Award. And he goes, here's a guy who's an animal, not in a sense that this guy's like this beast, but a guy who never gives up.
Never gives up.
And that's Arnold saying that about me. So I said, I guess it resonated.
That's a proud moment.
Yeah. So I thought about it. I said, wow, Arnold knows this about me. So that's a great thing.
That's
and he goes, as long as this guy's always like this, he'll never fail. He'll always be successful in life. And that's what I, keep in my head. I have setbacks, but I'm always going to move forward to just continually be persistent because I know the next guy's sleeping on the wheel.
That's right. That's right. God bless you, Rich.
Thank you.
That is so awesome. Rich, where can people find out more information about Gaspari supplements?
You could go to GaspariNutrition.com or
Okay.
GaspariAgeless.com. You could go to my, Instagram, Rich Gaspari, or Gaspari on my Instagram. You can, DM me on Instagram, if you want to get a hold of me. I do I was telling you, just like on the side, all the knowledge I've had from, getting in this conditioning, I want to spread that knowledge. So I am helping people, in getting them into shape.
You're coaching.
I'm coaching people, online coaching. I do talk, to these people. If I see some serious guys, I work with them weekly. And that's just something I'm doing for fun. But it's been really fun because I've been helping these guys win shows and,
That's
going
fantastic.
into coming. And I always say, like, what they say about your condition. Oh, you were in the best condition of the show. I said, I may not get you to win the show because if someone has better, shape or genetics. But if I can get you in the best condition, that's what I want to be able to do. So I've been doing that as well. So if you're interested, just DM me on Instagram that you're interested in, about my online coaching.
We're about to go hit a workout here pretty soon.
Oh, I'm really excited. We talked about working out about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I made this comeback and got on the cover of Iron Man and got myself back in shape. And I said, one of the things, the bucket list was getting to train with you. That we could train together because we were
great.
two rivals in the gym.
We're going to check that box, both of us. That is
We
awesome.
get to train together.
Brother, it's been so great having you here today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
I can't thank you enough for flying into town and being here in the studio with us. It's been wonderful.
I told you I wouldn't have missed it when you asked me to come here, whether we're going to do this remotely or do it live. I said, no, I'm flying out. I want to come be with you and spend time with you. And that's why I'm here.
I love it. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Hey, guys, please help us to grow the Lee Labrada Show by sharing this podcast with just one other person, and be sure to check the box below and subscribe. All right, you guys, get up, look up, stay motivated, and God bless.
The Lee Labrada Show.
Voices in my head, imprison me. Wanna